Everybody, so we're out here in beautiful snowmobile country in Quebec, but we're not riding sleds. Today we have these are the Apache track kits for the Can-Am Outlander. That's the 360 meant for year-round use, and this is the all-new Backcountry LT, specifically designed for the deep powder. So let's go find some big snow and see if this thing can keep up with the sleds. All right, we're back in from our ride now, and I just want to share some thoughts on this Outlander. And this model right here has these 360 tracks on it. I also rode the Backcountries a whole bunch. Here we can see both of Can-Am's track kits. So they offer two different types of tracks. These are the 360s, which are for year-round use. So these are for, mud, gravel, snow, sand, whatever you want. And you'll see the biggest difference. These ones have idler wheels all the way along, whereas these new Backcountry tracks, they use a slide rail system very similar to a snowmobile. Now that's going to help keep these lugs nice and vertical in the snow to give you some nice biting power, whereas these wheels will help those lugs actually bend a little bit. So for different surfaces you want a little bit more give in there. But yeah, you can just see the difference too in the actual lugs. Here the paddles aren't nearly as big as on these Backcountries, so when you get out in the deep powder, these things are going to be able to pull you along. The Backcountries with those big lugs, they really dig in. You really feel stuck to the ground in that machine. This machine, in a funny way, almost feels like it's a little lighter because you almost feel like you're up on top of the snow. And that's actually just because you have less traction. But less traction also equals, a little more sliding around. So it's almost a little more fun on the packed snow. The second you get off into the powder, this thing just bogs, and that's where you want the Backcountry kit. So you know what? If you were just riding kind of packed down trails, or if you know where you're going to be, and you know that something else has already been there, well then these 360 tracks, they truly are 360. But yeah, as the name suggests, Backcountry means backcountry. If you're going through the deep powder, you want those big lugs. So all the reps from Can-Am out here, they're running Skidoos, they're running Summit 800s. So I asked one of them very nicely if I could just take a quick rip on a Summit just to really feel the difference between, a traditional mountain sled and this Outlander with tracks. This sled is, you have to ride it aggressively. You have to be up, you have to be throwing your weight around, you have to be really involved in the ride. With these Outlanders, you get such a big width thanks to the tracks. They feel so stable, and you know what, your weight, throwing your weight into corners, it doesn't feel like it does a lot, but you don't really need to do it. You also never feel like you're gonna tip over like you do on this sled. So the Outlander, you get this big, stable kind of contact patch, which feels nice, and it's funny because the sled reacts to every little bit of the terrain and every kind of up and turn in the trail. The Outlander sort of just brutishly just charges through everything, and you kind of expect stuff to hit you and you kind of expect to react, and you don't have to. This thing just plows through. And you know what, even in the deep powder that we found here today, the ATVs have had no issue with these Backcountry kits. Now when it comes to ground clearance, adding this Backcountry kit adds 7 inches of clearance. Because again, you can't have that body just dragging through the snow. So getting all that extra clearance means that you're just going to be totally clear in the middle, and you're not going to be turtling this thing constantly. And if you just look at it from the side, it really is a significant difference. Now, another thing that Can-Am did on these machines we have here is they put on what they call, basically a snowmobile footwell. So it's these big, I gotta try to get some of the snow out of there so you guys can see it, but they're these big studs, and you can see right there, they go straight through. So the idea is to avoid exactly what's happening here and getting all this snowpack. Now, it didn't exactly work because they're still packed in here, but the key is if you use your boot, all you have to do is this, and all the snow goes down between those cracks, and eventually you can clear it out. And even when it is snowpacked, having these spikes here really grabs onto your boot and really make sure you stay on that machine. So these 360s add about 4 inches of ground clearance as compared to the 7 you get with the backcountries. And I mean, I think for the snow, you really need that clearance. And for, you know, mud or gravel, you don't need quite as much. So they only designed 4 inches of extra ground clearance over tires. So now here's this backcountry track. Now this is on an Outlander XTP 850, and what's been really interesting is this is an 850. The one with the 360 track is 1,000, but because you get these big paddles on this thing, this machine just feels like it really puts the power to the ground better because this track is digging in so well. So the big question, just like the side-by-sides, is it worth it? Now I'll put the specific pricing here up on screen, but we can still discuss it. And you know what? It's the same argument for the side-by-sides. If you get these backcountries, you don't need to put your Outlander away. If you live somewhere where it snows, you can run this thing 12 months of the year. And depending on what kind of riding you're doing, you can decide between backcountries or just the 360s. And you know, if you're on packed trails, if you're on groomed trails, the 360s are more than enough. If you get out here in the deep powder though, you're absolutely going to want these backcountries. But I digress. Is it worth it? Well, I think the short answer is yes, but it is a bit more complicated than that. I say yes because, again, it's going to save you buying a snowmobile. I mean, you know, $5 grand and you can get out there with your buddies on sleds. Now, that's the thing. Are you going to keep up? Well, you're not going to get stuck, especially not with these backcountries. These are serious tracks. But, you know, overall top speed, yeah, you're not going to keep up with the sled. With these tracks, the gearing is just so low that I think with the 360s, you know, I was pinning it on that machine and I was hitting about 38 miles an hour. It was about as good as she gets. So it felt plenty powerful when you're, you know, digging in the deep stuff and when you're climbing hills and stuff. But just, you know, straight up top speed, you're not quite going to match what a sled can do, of course. And of all the machines here, of all the Can-Ams, the only one that's truly going to keep up is the Turbo R Maverick X3. And remember, this thing is 91 horsepower. Actually, this is even a little less than 91 because it's an 850. But that thing's over 170 horse. So, you know, you really, the tracks and the snow eat your horsepower. You want high power. So in that way, top speed, this thing, it's just okay. It's never going to quite keep up. But if you want a serious track kid, you want to run in some real snow, not just the groomed light stuff, you want to get into the backcountry, these tracks are no joke. Okay, so that's it from Quebec today. We had an absolute blast riding these Outlanders with the backcountry kits. And we were in the backcountry. We were out on not groomed trails. We were just finding deep powder. And you know what? These things did an absolute amazing job of staying up out of the snow. And not just staying up, but also providing a ton of fun while doing it. So that's it for this review, guys. Make sure you go below, hit subscribe to TFL Off-Road, and come back to the channel for the latest news, views, and real-world reviews. See ya.